Have you seen this game called Atomic Heart? I've seen a few trailers and a few people comment on it much before it came out, and it looked very interesting. But today, apparently, out of nowhere, suddenly it's being boycotted. Atomic Heart is this new game that's come out very, very recently in the last couple days here in a mad and sublime utopia world. Take part in an explosive encounters, adapt your fighting style to each opponent, use your environment, and upgrade your equipment to fulfill your mission. If you want to reach the truth, you must pay in blood. That is the Steam synopsis for the game. And it is a very interesting game. It's a very, very propaganda-ish, communist utopia world. There's a lot that is inspired by the Russian background or the USSR in this sense, and even the developer seems to take and draw from everywhere around the world. They have several different countries, including people from Ukraine, working on it. And it's now the new target of a new boycott that's been spurred on by the Ukraine war, out of all things. Let's take a look. The Ministry of Digital Affairs reacted to the release of the Russian game Atomic Heart. Well, apparently they're out of Cyprus, the Memphis, that's where they are located, but they use people from all around the globe, so it's a very globalized game, including people that have worked on the game from Ukraine. So it's kind of like one of these things. Did they see what happened with the Hogwarts Legacy boycott and went, let's create a controversy, let's ban that and try and milk the gamers out of this game? I saw the game. It looked okay. It had some intriguing ideas to it, but for me, the game wasn't something that I knew right away would catch everybody's eye. And of course, because they're bringing in old school Russian style, the way the game was made, it would create the ire of what is going on with the conflict overseas. The digital ministry will send an official letter to Sony, Microsoft, Valve, with a request for a complete ban of the sale of digital versions of the game on the territory of Ukraine. So they don't want to sell it in Ukraine. That's fine. The rest of the world will sit here and still play it. It's one of these games where if it fell in my lap, I would probably play it, but ultimately, I wasn't going out of my way to try and spend money on this type of game. Hogwarts Legacy was at least thankfully provided by a fan, and if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be playing the game because I can't afford much right these days. But Hogwarts Legacy was one of those games where I was debating trying to find a way of purchasing it myself. Where Atomic Heart, it looks interesting, but my eyes are still with Hogwarts Legacy right now. There's much better titles out there right now, and I think Atomic Heart ultimately is one of those games where they're trying to feed off the boycott sensation that happened with Hogwarts Legacy. Now, for the way the game goes, it sounds like it is optimized a little bit more for PC, and it's sounding like they're having issues on the Xbox and not the PlayStation as well. So it's a very up and down game, dependent on who is playing it, dependent on where you are playing it. The Deputy Minister of Digital Transformation, Ogunsan Boraki, this is why I don't try and pronounce names, reported this in a comment on dev.ua, which is the article I have written up here. It's transcribed through Google Translate. We also call to limit the distribution of the game in other countries due to its toxicity, a potential collector of user data information, and the possibility of their transfer to third party in Russia, as well as potential use of money raised from the game purchases to wage war against Ukraine. So I know Hogwarts Legacy, they sold 12 million copies in 2 weeks, which netted them, I believe it's gross of $850 million. I have a sneaking suspicion that the Russian government isn't trying to fund a war effort based on a video game sales. This just sounds absolutely absurd when you break it down to the economy part of it. This really reminds me of how it came out where Twitch started not paying Russian streamers. They had nothing to do with the war effort that was going there, and suddenly they got their streams taken down or demonetized in that sense because of what their government is doing. I'm here in Canada. If they did the same thing here, I wouldn't be surprised ultimately with what has been going on in the world today. Someone's doing something in a government held position that a lot of people don't like. Now, I don't fall on either side of this war. I think the war is an absolute waste of money. I wish they would settle the differences here. I don't see the point to this because to me, this reminds me of what happened with Vietnam, where it became a proxy war and then money just got funneled to it. And it's just becoming a ongoing cycle and money being wasted to it. Our economies are suffering at the hands of this ultimately, and I think something needs to be done where they sit there and they go in front of the UN, or who knows, because the UN is all that great nowadays, trying to push certain agendas and all. There's a lot of details that I do not try to understand with the Ukraine Russian conflict, and it's not something that I'm interested in, something that I want to be interested in, and I really wish they would settle the differences ultimately instead of this continuing to spur on. Everything that I see here sitting from my computer, yeah, I could sit there and look at it, and every time I try and look at it, it just creates this hole on both sides of it where I sit there and go, I have no clue which side is really right in this matter. I think they need to come down to a peace talk and sit up and work out some sort of agreement ultimately, because otherwise the war is going to continue. And that is the thing of war, is either side of the coin will always fight each other no matter where they land. So it's going to happen regardless at this point, unless they sit there and come to terms. And that is where they need to come to. But a lot of people, from what I see, want to perpetuate this conflict and keep it going. He emphasizes that, according to media reports, the development of the game took place with money originating from from Russian enterprises and banks that were under sanctions, are systematically important to the Russian governments. Well, once again, this is kind of the same thing of what's going on with the Russian streamers. Uh, they had nothing to do with what their government did, and the banks aren't allowed to deal with them. We saw this here in Canada where people had their bank accounts frozen for sitting there and protesting a mandate. That's something in itself. That is an absolute craziness to think that that's where this world is coming to, where one government can't function. Although the Russian government is so big, it doesn't really matter. No matter what they try and do here, they're going to continue being able to fund themselves. It's kind of a weird situation. A lot of the stuff that's going on in that conflict is it's very nuanced, and it's when you look deeper into it, there's a lot of little details that a lot that gets overlooked with the mainstream media, and it's not something that I want to sit here and talk about, and why I try and stick to the games. Honestly, this game, if you want to play it, play the game. That's what it comes down to. If it looks good, play the game. If it doesn't look good, don't play the game. I have no beefs on it either side of that coin. I don't believe it's truly funding the Russian government, because if that was the way, it's very strange that this came out the day before the game was released. You would have heard about this months ago if there was actually a situation unfolding with this, because this conflict has been going on for a couple of years now. What is it, since 2014, where this has been bubbling up from? This game, I don't know how long this game's been in development, probably 4 years. It's very strange to me that all of a sudden, when the game is about to launch, this boycott comes up. And I call sus with this boycott, because I really think it's something that's being pushed to try and inflate the sales ultimately of the game for people to jump on the bandwagon here. And I don't think it's worth jumping on the bandwagon here. I don't think this game is that great. It looks interesting, the ideas behind the game. I believe the devs did a decent job on it, but ultimately I don't think it's that great of a game when it comes down to it. I've seen a lot of mixed reports with this game, that it falls off very quickly, that and even if you look at the Steam page, they have DLCs announced, meaning you never got the full game ultimately when it was out there. And this is the other reason why I do really enjoy Hogwarts Legacy, is because they never planned DLCs. They never planned for downloadable content for the game, meaning we got the entire BLT. We got the entire sandwich with the game that we ordered. Where Atomic Heart, they have downloadable content. You have to pay upwards to $200 for this entire game right now, which to me is a very underhanded way to try and promote and make an extra buck. I don't think it goes very far, and that is one of the other reasons why I don't think the game's going to do very well ultimately. It's going to do well, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be a Hogwarts Legacy well. It's not going to be an Elden Ring well. It's just going to be mid of the road, half decent game where you can play, you can put in a few hours of effort and actually play the game. I don't even know how long the game is. So ultimately they're saying don't fund it because it's got Russian ties. The money comes from the Russian banks, and that's who funded the game. Well, anything that's in Russia is going to be that sense. So it makes you wonder about The Day Before, which is another game that's being made with Russian ties. But that game in itself looks more like a scam than an actual development coming forward. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm your proud Canadian Phoenix. These are just some thoughts I had on Atomic Heart. Ultimately, don't boycott the game. If you want to play the game, go play the game. If you want to boycott it and make yourself feel great because of the war that's there, have fun. But this isn't a game that this is a game that was kind of on my radar, but at the same time, the controversy and now the idea behind the game for the boycott, I really think is just them trying to latch on to something that they saw with Hogwarts Legacy, where the boycott failed and actually promoted the game drastically. But that in itself, the game has Harry Potter to contend with. Thanks for watching. I'm your proud Canadian Phoenix, Cinder Shadow. I'm signing off here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.